Hello, in today's video we'll discuss something. What is education in your own words? Education refers to the discipline that is concerned with methods of teaching and learning in schools or schools like environments, as opposed to various non-formal and informal means of socialization. Okay, so we will discuss what is education mean. Education refers to the discipline that is concerned with the methods with the methods Education refers to discipline that is concerned with methods of teaching and learning in schools or school like environment. School like environment is opposed to various non-formal and informal means. Education discipline that is concerned with method of teaching and learning in schools or school like environment is opposed to various non-formal and informal means of socialization, e.g. rural development projects and education through parent-child relationship. Education can be thought of as the transmission of the values and accumulated knowledge of a society. In this case, it is equivalent to what social scientists term socialization enter children, whether conceiving among New Guinea tribes people or the middle class of Manhattan are born with culture. Education is designed to guide them in learning a culture, molding their behavior in the ways of adulthood, and directing them toward their eventual role in society. In the most primitive culture, there is often little formal learning, little of what one would ordinarily call school or classes or teachers. Instead, the entire environment and all activities are frequently viewed as school, and classes and many adults are is school teacher. A society grows more complex, however, the quantity of knowledge to be passed on from one generation to the next become more than any one person can know, and hence there must evolve more selective and efficient means of culture transmission. The outcome is formal education, the school, and the specialist called the teacher. A society becomes ever more complex and school become more or ever more institutionalized. Educational experience becomes less directly related to the daily life. It is a matter of showing learning in the context of the workaday world and more abstracted from practice, more a matter of displaying, telling and learning things out of context. This concentration of learning in a formal atmosphere allows children to learn far more of other culture than they are able to do by merely observing, and limitation as society gradually attaches more and more importance to education. It also tries to formulate the overall objectives, content, organization and strategies of education. Literature become laden and advice on the rearing of the younger generation. In short, there develop philosophies and theories of education. The article discusses the history of education, tracing the evolution of the formal teaching of knowledge and skill from for a treatment. Education is formative in early civilized culture. The education can be applied to primitive culture only in the sense of enculturation, which is the process of cultural transmission. A primitive person whose culture is the totality of his universe has a relatively fixed sense of cultural and timelessness. The model of life is relatively static and absolute, and it is transmitted from one generation to another with a little deviation. So education is informative in early civilized culture. Prehistoric in primitive culture, the term education can be applied to primitive culture only in the sense of enculturation, which is the process of cultural transmission. A primitive person whose culture is the totality of his universe has a relatively fixed sense of cultural. The model of life is relatively static and absolute, and it's transmitted from one generation to another with little deviation. As for prehistoric prehistoric data and education. The term education can be applied to primitive culture in this only in the sense of because of the variety and the countless thousands of primitive culture, it is difficult to describe any standards and uniform characteristic of pre-puberty education. Nevertheless, certain things are practiced commonly within culture. Children actually participate in the social process, uh, of adult activities. Called empathy, identification, and limitation. Primitive children, before reaching puberty, learn by the education in the earliest civilization, the old world civilization of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and North China. The history of civilization started in the Middle East about 3000 BCE, where the North China civilization began about a millennium and a half later. The Mesopotamian and Egypt civilization flourished almost simultaneously during the first civilization phase, 3000 to 1500 BCE. Although these civilizations differed, they shared non literacy achievement. The need of the creation of these highly developed civilization made writing aid formal education. Egypt, Egyptian culture and education were preserved and controlled chiefly by the priest and a powerful intellectual elite in the Egyptian theocracy, who also served as the political bulwarks by preventing culture diversity. The humanities as well as such practical subjects and geometry were in the some field is architecture, engineering, and sculpture were generally transmitted outside the context of formal schooling. So just keep in your mind these all are we are discussing in education.